Hi guys, welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you 8 more fantasy romance book recommendations. A while back, I made a series of fantasy recommendation videos, and a couple of them in particular seem to have done really well. One where I did fantasy romance recommendations, and another one where I gave recommendations for fantasy books that are dark and have morally gray characters in them. I will link both of those original videos up above if you want to check them out, but in this video I wanted to share 8 more fantasy romance books that I have read since making that video that I really liked. These are a mix of adult and YA with different types of fantasy. Hopefully this is fun and helpful for you guys. Let's go ahead and get into this. My first recommendation would actually probably fall more into paranormal romance, and this is an older series that I recently started and wanted to bring to your attention if you haven't read them yet. If you're looking for a series to binge, this might be a good one for you. This is the Changeling series by Hudson St. And in particular today I wanted to share my favorite book of the series so far, and that is Caressed by Ice. Now, these covers, granted, are quite cheesy, but these books are really fantastic. Each book in the series follows a different couple, but they also have bigger plot arcs, and the world building is just so good. I'm really loving these. They are set in a world where humans have diverged into different paths. There are the Psi, which are these powerful sort of psychic beings who have political control of the world. There are the Changelings, who are basically like shifters, and then there's regular humans. And so far, these books have featured romances between a Psi and a Changeling, and this is my favorite of the bunch so far. I think it's so well done and so smart, and I loved the couple. I think that the world that she's created here is so fascinating. There's a lot of political intrigue. There are murder mysteries in each of the books, at least so far that I have read. Yeah, I'm just really enjoying them. One thing I will note is that a lot of the heroes in this book follow kind of the alpha male tradition, so do be aware of that. It's not my favorite thing, but I do feel like it's balanced out pretty well by having powerful female characters matching up with them, so I don't mind it as much as I normally do. But Caressed by Ice so far is definitely my favorite, and I would recommend checking out this series if you don't already know about it. I know I'm very late to the game on these, but definitely one worth reading. My next recommendation is a brand new debut indie published fantasy romance that I just read and absolutely loved. This one is available on Kindle Unlimited if you guys have that. It is Rain and Ruin by J.D. Evans, the first book in the Mage of the Wheel series. I absolutely fell in love with this. I thought that this was just so good. The romance in this was fantastic. It features a real partnership between the two characters, and this has tons of political intrigue, really interesting world building. It's set in a world that is inspired by the ancient Middle East, and it's interesting because the author of this book actually served for 10 years as an officer in the US military and spent some time stationed in Beirut, and the history and culture of that place is a lot of what inspired the setting in this book. I would call Rain and Ruin a really great crossover novel for people who are into high fantasy and interested in getting into fantasy romance. I think this is a really good pick. The romance is there, it's good, it's strong, the side characters are really fantastic, but there's also lots of action and political intrigue and other things to keep your attention, and I just think that this is a really standout debut and one worth watching. It is the first in a series, and there are other side characters who I would be very excited to see more fully fleshed out and developed in future books. I will say the first 50 pages or so of this book is pretty slow, so do expect that getting in. You get a lot of world building there. The pacing is a little slow, but once you get to about the 50-page mark, the pace really picks up. It'll suck you in, and I just totally fell in love with the romance and the world. This is kind of everything that I want from a fantasy romance, so I would definitely recommend checking it out. Again, it is available on Kindle Unlimited. Next, I want to recommend 2 of my favorite books by a really amazing YA author who writes magical realism with a very strong romantic element to it. Probably one of the only authors I read who will make me cry, and I am okay with it. I just love them. I love their writing. It's so beautiful and poetic. It may not be everyone's cup of tea, but if you like that sort of writing, think like Laini Taylor in The Strange the Dreamer duology, but with magical realism. If that appeals to you, I would definitely check their books out. And the author I'm talking about is Anna-Marie McLemore. The first book I want to recommend is When the Moon Was Ours. This is just an achingly beautiful book about a girl who grows roses from her wrist and the trans boy that she falls in love with, who paints these moons and hangs them for her. And there are tragic and sad things that happen in the story, but it's just so beautiful, and it's such a beautiful story of love and family, and I just really loved it. This was such a good book. If you're looking for a book that is own voices for queer representation and Latinx representation, Anna-Marie McLemore is a great one to read. They are Latinx, they're married to a trans man, and they recently came out as gender non-binary. So if you're looking for kind of more diversity in your fantasy romance, I think they are a good one to check out. The other book that I really love from them is Blanca y Roja. This is a really interesting and beautiful retelling mashup of two fairy tales, of Swan Lake and the story of Snow White and Rose Red. It's a book about sisterhood and identity and love. It's got a lot of romance in it, and again, just like achingly beautiful, one that I absolutely loved. So if you're interested in checking out Anna-Marie McLemore, I would definitely recommend picking up either of these books or both of these books. They're wonderful fantasy romance that is more magical realism. There is magic in both of them, but they are set in realistic world settings. Next up is a book that I really loved that is probably the least romance heavy, I would say, of the books that I'm going to talk about, but I just loved it, so I want to talk about it here, even though I'm going to give you some warnings because you should know what this book is and what it isn't. This is The Beautiful by Renee Audier. I really enjoyed this book. I like her writing. She has very lush, poetic sort of prose. This is a paranormal historical mystery novel set in 1800s Louisiana with a diverse cast of characters. The way it was being pitched is a return to vampires, and I think a lot of people went into this expecting a vampire-heavy paranormal romance, and that is really not what this is. There are vampires and paranormal creatures, but they are not named specifically on the page until very late in the book, because really this is more of a historical murder mystery with a strong romantic element to it. So if you like romantic suspense and you like the idea of having a mashup of romantic suspense, mystery with some paranormal romance elements and kind of a darker romance thing, I would check out The Beautiful. I loved it. Your mileage is going to vary depending on what you like, but this is definitely more of a mystery plot where you have to put different pieces together to figure out what's going on. The world building in this is not going to be handed to you. A lot of it doesn't all come together until the end of the book, but you get hints of it throughout, and I'm really excited to continue on with the series. So I was a fan of this, and I would recommend checking it out if that is the sort of book that you enjoy. My next recommendation is another kind of crossover book that is high fantasy plus fantasy romance, but probably one of my favorite things about this book was the relationship. This is Empire of Sand by Tasha Sori. I love this. This is such an incredible debut. It is an adult fantasy novel that is inspired by Mughal era India, and it is just stunning. It's beautiful. The characterization is amazing. The detail behind the world building and the magic system is really great, and it centers a very strong relationship that is kind of a marriage of convenience to friends to lovers story that is really one of partnership and mutuality, and I loved it. I loved the romance in the story so much. I loved the couple and the way that they supported each other and came together. I just thought was really beautiful. I will say for this one, maybe check out my Goodreads review for trigger warnings, content warnings, because there are definitely some traumatic things that happen in this book, and it's not all happy all the time. This is like a little bit darker, but still a really beautiful romance. My Goodreads is always linked down below if you guys want to check that out, but I think this is one well worth picking up. The next book that I want to recommend to you guys is a little bit more of a controversial one. It is a new adult fantasy romance. Some people did not like this for various reasons, so maybe check out their reviews if you need to. The main thing that I would say about this is that a lot of the negative reviews I've seen of them, not all of them, but a lot of them, I think have to do with the fact that this book is a fantasy romance and isn't actually a high fantasy. And I think a lot of people reading it as a high fantasy weren't fans, which is fair. Like, in terms of just a high fantasy, the world building is mediocre and it's, you know, like, there are holes in it. But I really love it as a fantasy romance if you enjoy a marriage of convenience and enemies to lovers trope with, like, banter back and forth. This isn't going to work for everyone, but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a whole lot of fun. This is Surfin and Dove by Shelby Moran. So I do think that this maybe tries to do too much towards high fantasy and is less successful in that, but at least for me, I found the romance element of this to be very successful, and this is a very readable book. It's quite bingeable, it's quick to get through, it's a lot of fun, and in this I kind of like the role reversal that you get where the hero is the virgin instead of the heroine. I just thought that was kind of fun and entertaining. Again, not one that's going to work for everybody, but I just really, really loved this for the romance element of it. So I'm going to recommend this to you guys as a fantasy romance. I think what this does well is bringing traditional romance tropes into a new adult fantasy genre setting, but I think that readers who are not familiar with the romance genre maybe struggles more with this, but if you're kind of used to those tropes and expecting that, I think it's a lot of fun. And the final book that I want to recommend to you guys today is one that I would love to see get a little more traction. I thought this book was fantastic, and I haven't seen that many people reading it. It is a YA kind of dark fantasy romance, and this is Beyond the Black Door by A.M. Strickland. I loved this, and it was such a page turner, and I just really loved it. I thought this was so interesting and so much fun. And the thing that's interesting to me about this too is I think it does a really good job of explaining diversity in terms of queerness and the way that that can affect relationships. The main character in this book is a young woman who is asexual biromantic, which means that while she is not interested in sex, she is romantically attracted to people of both genders. And I think that is really well handled here. Kind of the difference between interest in sex and interest in romance, and different types of gender expression. I think those things are handled really well, and it's just so great. I don't want to spoil too much, but what I will say about this is that the main character and her mother before her are what is called soul walkers. The main character, Kamai, inherited this ability from her mother, and soul walking is this thing where if they fall asleep close to another person, they're able to go into their soul and kind of suss out their secrets. So Kamai's mother does this by being a kind of high-end sex worker, and Kamai needs to find her own path to do that since sex is not something she's interested in and that is not a path that she wants to take. But the other piece of this that's really interesting is that ever since she was a little girl, whenever Kamai goes to sleep and is in the soul realm, there's this mysterious black door that follows her wherever she goes. And her mother has always told her, never open the black door, like never do it. And so for a long time she never does it, but of course the day comes when she opens the black door. And so part of the question is, what is in fact beyond the black door, and what happens when she opens the black door? I loved this. I could not get enough of it. It has this really rich, dark romance element to it that I think is really well executed. And for a YA audience, one of the things that I really love about this is that it really tackles the fact that you can't necessarily control who you fall in love with, but you can control what you choose to do about it. And as somebody who definitely fell for people who were not the healthiest choices for me, I can appreciate that, and I like the way that it's handled in this book. So I'm going to recommend Beyond the Black Door by A.M. Strickland. So there you have it. If you are looking for some fantasy with a strong romantic element to it, there are 8 more books that you can check out, ones that I really enjoyed, and hopefully this video gives you some sense of which of these might be good picks for you. Talk to me in the comments down below. Let me know any of your thoughts or feelings on any of the books that I discussed in this video. And for your question of the day, let me know what are 1 or 2 of your favorite fantasy romance books. Let me know. If you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you want to see more. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.